Here we go, here we go, here we go. Yes, we're talking about communication. What happens in a workplace when we're stressed? Our communication goes. And then, not only that, when our communication goes, we are stressed. So, we're going to share some strategies, some skills, as well as a few tips on how to effectively communicate. And we're going to do that in what? Just one moment. Hi there. Welcome to Stress Talk Live. This is the place where we help women over 40 to live healthier lives through strategic stress management and solution focused self care. I'm Marcyline Bailey, and I am your host today. I'm so glad that you joined me today. I'm real excited about what we're going to talk about today because communication is, hey, we're not really talking. Let's just be real. We're not really talking. We're talking at each other. We're not really listening. We're not communicating what we need to communicate, and so on and so on and so on. So, I want to share some things that will help you maintain low stress levels as well as give you um, strategies to use when communication is really difficult. Okay, so we're going to get into that in just a moment. I want to share a few things with you though before we get started. First of all, please like, follow, and subscribe to ML Bailey Consultants. You'll find me on Facebook. Yes, I'm still there. On Instagram, I'm there too. And on YouTube. That's where you'll find the replay for this, for all of our live broadcasts. Also, go to this link to sign up for our newsletter and to get additional information about ML Bailey Consultants. This is going to be very important for you today because in the past, and I say in the past, in the very recent past, um, I would send out a replay, the replay to my subscriber list immediately following the broadcast. Things are going to change. The replay is going to be in a new our newly revamped newsletter that will come out on Wednesday. In addition to the replay, newsletter subscribers will also receive a summary of the broadcast, a summary of what we talked about, as well as a PDF download of pertinent things that I've shared, i.e., strategies and skills that I've shared and I've talked about today. So please make sure that you sign up for the newsletter. What are we talking about today? Yes, I'm going to jump right into it if you all don't mind, because I think it's, I don't want to, oops, what am I trying to do? You know what? I'm trying to move my screen, my note screen over, but for some reason it didn't do what I wanted it to do. So, yeah. So if I'm looking like this, that's because my notes are over here, and that's where I need to look so I don't get off track. Hey, lady, how are you? It's good to see you today. We're talking about communication. So I know you are a communicator. So you might have some strategies that you can share with us as well today. But we're going to jump into it. What are we talking about? You know, as I said earlier, we're not really talking. We're talking at each other. And in the workplace, when we're not communicating, stress levels go way up. Not only that, when stress levels are way up, we don't communicate very well. And so we need to practice certain strategies and certain skills in order to be heard, in order to build relationships that that are meaningful, especially in our workplace. So today we're going to talk about 3 effective communication skills that grow powerful workplace relationships. And again, as you all know from listening to me, I don't just do kind of surface level stuff. I usually do a deep dive. I go rather deep. So please bear with me as we get into our first skill. Our first skill is mindful communication. And as you know, I I believe in mindfulness, right? I believe that mindfulness is a skill that is very important for us. I'm still trying to move my screen back and forth. So, maybe I can do it now. Let's see. Nah, can't do it yet. Okay. So, it's mindfulness is very important. It's a very important skill because it keeps us in the present. We're not in the future where we're going to be anxious and concerned and worried about what's going to happen a minute from now. And we're not in the past wondering, trying to figure out why things happened the way it did in the past. When we're in the future, it causes us to be anxious. When we're, and I'm saying stewing over the future, when we're pondering the future, I mean, really thinking about the future, trying to figure it out, that's when our anxiety level goes up. When we're in the past and we're trying to figure out, well, dog, why did I do that? Why did I say that? How could I have been so silly? What was I thinking? That's when we tend to feel sad, depressed. So, with these, when we're in the moment, because mindfulness, as you know, is staying present. We talked about that last week. It's being present in the moment, not jumping forward, not jumping backward, but being right now. It's right now. That's 2 words that describe mindfulness. Right now. So when we're talking about mindful communication, what we're talking about, or at least what I'm talking about, and what I want you to begin to start thinking and using and making it a habit is before you speak, there are several things that I want you to consider before saying anything. First of all, when a situation or event occurs, what do you believe about that? What do you believe about it? So you want to think, what do you want to consider? What am I believing about this situation or this event? Because what you believe is going to influence what you think. And what you think is going to influence what you feel. And in turn, what you feel is going to influence what you say and how you say it. So, the first thing you want to do when you're using mindful communication is think about or consider, what do I believe about this situation? You also, what am I thinking about this situation? What do I feel about this situation? When you do those 3 things, it's going to slow you down. It's going to cause you to be thoughtful about what you want to say and how you want to say it. Now, if you're like me, you're very, you might be impulsive at times. And when something happens, you want to just zoom. You want to say what you need to say and get it out immediately. A mindful approach is to consider again, what do I believe about this situation? What am I thinking currently about this situation? How does what I think make me feel? And then you can, again, because you're staying present, you're being curious, you're not using judgment, you're not being judgmental, you can craft a response if necessary that is reasonable, meaningful, and thoughtful. The other thing, so that's before you speak. The other thing I want you to consider and start practicing is before you speak, I want you to think about what does the other person or the other people involved in this situation, in this event, believe about this situation or this event? What are they thinking and what do they feel? Now, I know it's very easy to say, and it is, we don't know. And we don't. We don't always know what other people are thinking, and we can't certainly tell what they believe, but we can kind of tell what they feel, right? What I'm asking with this is to put yourself in the other person's shoes. When we do that, we are less judgmental about things. We also, when we do that, it's a lot easier for us to extend grace to the other person because we want to extend grace to the other person as well as to ourselves, right? We need to I was just getting a text about the Oscars. Can you believe that? I was getting a text about the Oscars. When we are, that's funny. It's from a good friend of mine who I adore, um, who watches those shows because she loves watching the gowns and how people are dressing. And she just said that Ariana Grande's blood red gown is stunning. But I'm here with you, so let me get on track. So, because it takes the judgment out of things, because again, we're staying in the moment and we can take time to extend grace to the other person. The third thing under before you speak is, do the facts of the situation validate what I believe, what I think, and what I feel about the situation or the event? How often have you removed yourself from a situation, or a situation, an event has occurred and you've had to step back and you're thinking about it and you're like, well, gee, that's a little different than, as you play things back in your mind, you're like, that's a little different than what I initially thought. Or there's another way to look at that, or there's another way to consider what happened or what was said. So instead of speaking first, I'd like for you to consider if the facts of the situation validate your belief around the situation, your thought around the situation, as well as what you feel about the situation. Now, the reason I think this is very important is because we often have thought patterns that that's default. We have default thought patterns that we rely on. And so when we take a more mindful approach to situations, we can remove ourselves or be mindful and thoughtful of that particular default thought pattern. For example, thought patterns that we should be aware of: black or white thinking, it is or it isn't. Jumping to conclusions is a thought pattern that's often a default. A negative leaning thought pattern is often a thought pattern that we go to by default. Um, uh, I could name some more, but I don't want to take a whole lot of time to do that, I know that I've gone over thought patterns in a previous stress talk live. But we want to be aware of those thought patterns. And when we're aware of those thought patterns, we can be more conscious of what we're actually telling ourselves repeatedly about the event or the situation that occurred. And again, we can extend more grace to ourselves as well to others. And we can look at the facts around a situation more clearly as opposed to relying on what we're feeling or what we're telling ourselves. So, we're talking about mindful communication as one effective communication skill that helps us to grow powerful workplace relationships. And what we've shared is that before speaking, consider, what do I believe about the situation or the event? What do I think about the situation or event? And what am I feeling as a result of the situation or event? I'm asking you also to do the same related to other people. Think about or consider what the other person or the other people are believing about the event, what they are thinking, and what they are feeling. And yes, I'm aware that we don't really know, but you can often tell. You can tell by a person's expression and how they are reacting. You can get a sense of what they are feeling as well as what they might be thinking. And then third, do the facts of the situation validate what I believe, what I think, and what I am feeling? So we want to be mindful in our communication. That's a skill, mindful communication. And I've shared 3 ways to do that. In addition, I shared, what are you telling yourself? And that is related to those thought patterns that cause us to tell ourselves things repeatedly. That black and white thinking, jumping to conclusions, etc., etc. Okay? Okay. Let's go to the next communication skill. Communication styles. Let's talk about that. So, we know that there are a number of different communication styles, right? And those communication styles are passive, aggressive, passive aggressive, as well as assertive. And let's talk about those for just a few minutes, okay? Because these are skills. Knowing your particular style of communication is also very important, and it is a skill because when you know your particular style of communication, you are able to communicate in an effective way. So let's talk about that. I wanted to share what each style is, and I'll give you just a few bullet points about different particular styles, okay? So, a passive communication. What's passive communication? You probably already know, right? If you know what it is or you can kind of describe it, drop it in the chat. Let's hear what you consider to be passive communication. Because passive communication is used quite often, right? And I'm not talking about passive aggressive. I'll get to that in just a moment. Passive communication is when a person doesn't express their own needs or what they're feeling or what they're thinking. They're ignoring their own ability to do so, and they're allowing other people to describe for them. They're handing it off. They're just deferring things to another person. I've done that. I've done it. I've done it. When I've gotten into discussions that where I felt that I wasn't being heard or it didn't matter what I said, I was like, oh, hey, okay, you take it. You go right ahead. You go right ahead. So I'm not saying that it is not an effective form of communication. I'm saying that it is not always the best form of communication, right? Um, Sometimes when we are passive and we allow people to, um, we allow, give our power, our communication power to others, it can cause us to build up resentment. And that's where you see people blowing up. And, it's like all of a sudden they blow up and they can't stop. Another form of communication is, as I've said, is passive aggressive communication. Well, let's talk about aggressive communication first, okay? Aggressive communication is really being just very hostile, argumentative, not allowing anybody else to say anything, cutting people off, preventing the other person from explaining or sharing information. And it's hurtful. It can be hurtful, but it's bad. It's almost badgering, but it's very aggressive. It's not allowing the other person to express themselves. We run into people who are very aggressive in their conversation. I've been in conversations with other women, and they have an aggressive um, tone to their voice. They have an aggressive approach in their words. And that turns me off, y'all. I have to say it. I'm an introvert and I can be quiet spoken. I don't like when people are talking at me, like, yeah. I don't care for that. And I take a passive stance, which doesn't work all the time. But anyway, when a person has is using an aggressive style of communication, right? Let's talk about passive aggressive. Passive aggressive is that sarcasm. It's that um, it's that avoidance. It's indirect communication. It's that type of communication that is it appears to be passive, but there's some subtle things going on underneath the surface that are not all that aren't great. It's not a good form of communication. It's also, it doesn't consider other people's feelings. Um, and it's just not a good form of communication. And that is very prevalent in the workplace, isn't it? Passive aggressive communication. And then we have assertive communication. And that's when we are able to express ourselves directly and honestly, without being aggressive and without being passive, right? And without being passive aggressive, but it is communicating with respect, being able to listen to others and receive information from others. And it's an effective form of communication, especially in the workplace. It is very effective. So let's so how does that relate to our skills? What form of communication is your go-to? What is your default form of communication? Knowing that is important. Also, knowing others' default form of communication is important too. And when we know that, we can adjust in a way that helps us to express what we need to express as well as to hear what we need to hear. So knowing communication styles, not only your own, but others, is very important to growing those powerful workplace relationships. So last but not least, what's the third form of effective communication? And this is one of my favorite, and it's one of the ones that I share with my clients, and it's called I statements. I statements are statements that allow us to assertively express what we need to express, especially in difficult situations. And this is the format. When you, and then you can state, when you state what happens, I feel or I think, you state how you feel or think, because you state why what another person did causes you to feel or think that way, and then you tell them what you would prefer instead. I statements, again, are a great form of assertive communication. It's a format that I share with my clients. It's a format that I share with couples. It's a format that I share when I'm working with people who are having difficulty communicating with each other. What it isn't, however, and a lot of times people have trouble with, I know what it is, but, what is it not? First of all, it is not a passive form of communication, and um, it is not giving the other person a pass, right? It's not enabling them to run over you or to talk down to you. It's a means for you to express what they did, how you feel or think about it, why it causes you to do so, and what you want them to do instead. It's very clear, it's very succinct. Now, does that mean that the other person is going to do what you want? Does it mean that the other person is going to react in a favorable way? No, it doesn't always. But what it does mean is that you are using a skill that allows you to interact with a person in a respectful manner, maintaining your dignity and integrity. And yes, that grows powerful workplace relationships, because when others see you do that, they gain respect for you, or it confirms the respect that they have for you, and they will gravitate towards you and away from the other person, or they will just gravitate towards you. Communication is about communication is about meaningful relationships, whether that's in the workplace, whether that's at home, whether that's in your community. It's about meaningful relationships, maintaining those relationships, growing those relationships, expanding them, making them stronger. That's the benefit of having 3 effective communication skills that help you to grow those powerful workplace relationships. So we have just talked about just that. 3 effective communication skills that grow powerful workplace relationships. I've talked about mindful communications. I've talked about communication styles and the value to knowing your own communication style as well as those of others. And I've talked about I statements, which is a form of assertive communication that you can use in any setting at any time. Again, for those of you who are on our, for those of you who are on our email, our subscriber list, you are going to receive a summary of this live stream, as well as the video, as well as a PDF download of all the things that we've talked about. And you're going to get that on Wednesday. So if you haven't signed up, make sure you do so. I'm Marcyline Bailey. That's all for now. Everybody, just take good care.